How's it going, gamers? My name is Rushcode, and today we're looking at the inventory system again. This time we'll be looking at how to drop objects outside of the inventory. Previously, we looked at how we can drag and drop things inside the inventory, swap items, and even merge items and overflow items as well. So today, to do with dropping things outside of the inventory, I don't have the activation using the mouse click. So it's just a basic system where if I exit the inventory, it drops all the items in front of me. And the reason it's floating in midair is because it's following the position of my feet. I could have made it based on raycasting so that it'll actually hit the ground it's on, but I was just too lazy to do that for this situation, so I wanted to keep things simple and focus on how to make the stuff happen in the inventory itself. And before I could do any of the dropping stuff, I had to create these boxes, which are known as collectibles. And here's what one of them looks like upon closer inspection. So you have a cube and you have a trigger box surrounding it. Now, if you're wondering why I have a trigger box around my cube, well, that has something to do with collecting items, so tune into the next video to find out more about that. For the purposes of dropping the item onto the ground or spawning it into existence, I just needed to make an actor for it. And I wanted to animate it a bit as well, so I made 3 different collectible class child classes for the different items and put most of the coding into the parent collectible. So in this parent collectible, I have a few blueprints. One of them is to do with hovering the item and rotating the item when it's sitting on the ground. And it does this every tick, so every frame in the game, it will do these animations. But before any of this happens, the first thing that happens is me dropping the collectible out of the inventory. As soon as I close the inventory, the game will check if my mouse still has an item, and if it does, then it starts doing all of this stuff, which is a lot to go through. Let's see. First we jump into a for loop. That is to do with a looping mechanism where we go through each item that I'm holding onto with the mouse. So for example, if I'm holding 32 items, I will do this loop 32 times to drop each item out one at a time of the inventory. And the way it does that is by spawning the actor based on the class, which is a collectible tied into the source array. But the position or location in which we need to spawn it into is what's really complicated here. So it's to do with things known as vectors, and vectors essentially add together to give you a new vector, and all vectors are calculated from the origin of the game world. So I need a vector that goes to the bottom of my character or the capsule. I need one that goes from the capsule looking out in front of me, so that's the forward vector. And I also need to create a vector based on how big my trigger box is for the character, which I think you can see here if I go to the viewport. Yeah, so it's this trigger box here. Based on how big that box is, I need to make a vector that can go from the center of my character and far enough out so that it's outside of the box trigger, and that's what these calculations here are doing. These random nodes are simply randomizing roughly where their location would be outside of the box, so it's not always the same spot. And then you do a few calculations by rescaling how big that is, and then scaling the forward vector as well, because the forward vector is 1 unit long. We want it to be as long as it needs to be so that it's outside of the box. And then you add that vector to the character's central location, which creates the final location for where this will be. So let's say this block here represents the origin of the world, and this block here represents your character. And you want to spawn a block maybe around here. The vector going from the character to your block is a vector that's calculating from the origin. So at first, that's going to be placed over here. If you want it to be placed in front of your character, you have to first grab the vector from the origin to the character, and then add on the vector from the character to the spawnable object, and that's when it shows up in the right spot. So after everything is spawned in correctly, it will complete the loop and remove the item from the mouse, because we don't want it attached to the mouse while we're playing the game. And then the final thing is to animate the object that has been spawned into the world. So this is where hover and rotate comes in. For hovering it, I used a timeline that has a sine graph. This graph will control how the item floats up and down on the same spot. And set world location will keep updating that position to whatever's the new location following that sine curve. The other thing is to rotate the item. So this is much more straightforward. You just need to get the rotation of the item, and then using a timeline with a straight line, it just updates the angle from 0 to 360 in every frame, going around the Z-axis. Put all that together and voila, you have your item rotating and hovering up and down. It took a lot of work to figure out how to get this thing to do what it needed to do because of, local rotations, local locations and all this stuff, but it was really satisfying when I finally got it to work, and I think it's really cool how smoothly it can just do what it does. If you guys think this is cool too, then let me know down in the comments below. In the final video, we'll be looking at how to collect these items, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, hope you guys have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, or night, wherever you are. Thanks for watching, guys. If you liked it, smash like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Rushcode out.